What if the advice you've been given about protecting your kidneys after 65 is only half the story? Most seniors who've heard the word creatinine from a doctor get the same short conversation. Cut the salt, watch your protein, limit this, avoid that. A list of things to take away and almost nothing about what actually belongs on the plate. That gap matters more than most people realize because it leaves an entire category of helpful choices completely off the table. Walter came to me at 74, sharp, active, and the kind of patient who does his homework before every appointment. His last set of labs showed his creatinine drifting slightly upward, and his own doctor told him in passing to watch his diet. Nothing more specific than that. For 3 months, Walter eliminated food after food out of fear, unsure which restrictions actually mattered. When we finally sat down together, the real shift wasn't one more thing to avoid. It was learning which ordinary snacks had been quietly working in his favor the entire time. I'm Dr. William Parker. Kidney health and healthy aging have been the center of my clinical work for close to 2 decades. And today I'm walking you through 5 specific ordinary snacks, the kind you can find at any grocery store, that research and clinical experience connect to lower kidney workload and better support for healthy creatinine levels as we age. Stick around for all 5. Snack number 4 uses a preparation trick almost nobody over 65 has ever been told. And snack number 5 is a food most older adults have been quietly avoiding for years, for a reason that no longer holds up once you look closely at it. Here's a second story worth hearing before we move on. Patricia, 72, came to her appointment convinced that a single elevated lab result meant her kidneys were failing. It didn't. One number drawn on one day told her almost nothing about the actual trend, but nobody had explained that to her, so she spent 2 frightening weeks assuming the worst. That fear is common, and it's almost always unnecessary once the full picture is understood. One more thing before we start. If clear, practical guidance for aging well is what you came here for, go ahead and subscribe right now. It genuinely helps this information reach more of the people who need it. Let's get into it. Before the 5 snacks themselves, there's a concept worth understanding first, because the reasoning behind every food choice on this list traces back to it. I call it the aging kidney workload principle. Here's the biology in plain terms. As the body gets older, kidney function tends to decline gradually, even in people without any diagnosed disease. Blood flow to the kidneys drops with age, and the microscopic filtering units inside them, called nephrons, become less efficient one by one. Creatinine is a waste product generated by ordinary muscle activity, and it's the number your doctor watches to estimate how well your kidneys are still filtering. When fewer nephrons are operating at full strength, creatinine has a harder time clearing the bloodstream, and the figure on your lab report can start to climb. 3 levers connect food directly to that process. First, the filtering burden. Every gram of protein and every additive-heavy processed food creates waste your kidneys have to clear. Lowering unnecessary burden, particularly from low-quality protein sources and heavily processed snacks, gives the nephrons you still have room to work efficiently instead of straining to keep up. Second, inflammation and oxidative stress. Aging research consistently links chronic low-grade inflammation to accelerated kidney decline, above and beyond what age alone would predict. Antioxidant-rich foods help counter that inflammatory load, which is part of why several items on today's list lean heavily on produce rather than supplements. Third, hydration and blood pressure. Both factors directly determine how hard the kidneys have to work moment to moment. A snack that supports healthy blood pressure is doing kidney work even when nobody thinks of it that way. It's also worth pausing on something that causes a lot of unnecessary worry. Creatinine numbers fluctuate. A single test drawn after a long walk, a dehydrated morning, or even a red meat heavy dinner the night before can shift the result without reflecting any real change in kidney health. Trends across several months matter far more than any one number in isolation. And that context alone eases a lot of anxiety for the patients I work with. Every snack in today's list touches at least one of those 3 levers, and several touch all 3 at once. Keep that thread in mind as we move through them, because it's what ties 5 seemingly unrelated foods into one coherent approach. Genetics and pre-existing conditions still shape the ceiling of what diet alone can accomplish, and that's worth stating plainly rather than glossing over. Two people eating identically similar diets can show meaningfully different lab trends over a decade, depending on factors like blood pressure history, diabetes status, and family history of kidney disease. None of that makes today's 5 snacks less worthwhile. It simply means food is one lever among several, working alongside medication, movement, and regular monitoring rather than replacing any of them. A distinction worth drawing clearly: age-related kidney decline and diagnosed chronic kidney disease are not the same thing, even though the dietary strategies overlap significantly. Plenty of seniors watching this video have never received a CKD diagnosis at all. Their labs simply show the ordinary, gradual softening of function that comes with decades of living. For that group, today's 5 snacks function largely as prevention and support, not correction. For anyone with a formal CKD diagnosis, the same foods still apply, but staging and individual mineral targets matter more, which is exactly why a dietitian's involvement carries extra weight in that situation. It's also worth naming a myth that causes unnecessary alarm. Getting older does not automatically mean kidney failure is coming. Gradual, mild decline in filtering capacity is a near universal part of aging, similar to the way eyesight or hearing softens gradually for most people. It becomes a serious concern only when the decline accelerates beyond what age alone would explain, or when it's driven by an underlying condition like diabetes or high blood pressure. Understanding that difference removes a lot of unnecessary fear from this conversation, and it's part of why the 5 snacks ahead are framed as support rather than rescue. A quick but important note before we continue: nothing in this video replaces a conversation with your physician or a renal dietitian who can review your actual lab work. Consider this the layer of specific practical detail that a routine 10-minute appointment rarely has time to cover, not a substitute for that appointment. Body the sapor almatriaco. The 5 snacks. 1. Red bell peppers. Margaret was 69 when her doctor mentioned watching her potassium. Within a month, she'd quietly stopped eating vegetables altogether, unsure which ones were actually a concern. That kind of overcorrection happens constantly, and it removes far more nutrition than necessary. A common assumption trips people up here: that all vegetables carry similar mineral concerns for aging kidneys. They don't. Red bell peppers sit among the lowest potassium vegetables available at any grocery store, while offering an unusually high concentration of vitamin C and antioxidant compounds, nutrients that directly counter the oxidative stress accelerating kidney decline with age. There's an added benefit worth naming. Vitamin C also supports immune function and skin health, 2 areas that matter increasingly after 65. So this snack is doing more than one job at once. The practical detail: half a cup of raw sliced red bell pepper, plain or paired with a small amount of plain hummus, delivers a crunchy, satisfying snack without the mineral load carried by many healthy-sounding vegetable staples. The mistake most seniors make: reaching for tomato-based salsas as a safe vegetable snack. Tomatoes, despite their reputation as a health food, actually rank among the higher potassium items in the produce aisle, a detail that surprises almost everyone hearing it for the first time. Zoom out for a moment, and this snack represents something larger than one vegetable. Fear-driven elimination, cutting entire food groups because one related item was flagged as risky, is one of the most common patterns among older adults managing any health condition, and it almost always removes more nutrition than it protects. Red bell peppers are a small, concrete example of a much bigger principle. Specificity beats blanket caution nearly every time. Bonus tip: buying peppers pre-sliced from the grocery store's produce section removes the prep barrier entirely, which matters more than it sounds. Convenience is often the real deciding factor in whether a healthy snack habit sticks. 2 egg whites. Robert, 76, had been losing muscle steadily for over a year. His doctor's advice, cut back on protein, was accurate in spirit but incomplete in practice. Nobody had explained that not every gram of protein places the same weight on aging kidneys. Protein quality changes everything here. Egg whites qualify as a complete high biological value protein, meaning they supply every essential amino acid the body needs in a form it can use efficiently, while carrying almost none of the phosphorus load concentrated in the yolk or found throughout most processed protein products. That combination allows older adults to preserve muscle mass, which matters enormously for strength, balance, and fall prevention, without adding unnecessary filtering demand. Muscle loss deserves its own mention here because it's one of the most underappreciated risks of over-restricting protein in older adults. Sarcopenia, the medical term for age-related muscle loss, contributes directly to falls, hospitalizations, and loss of independence. A blanket, eat less protein instruction followed without nuance can quietly accelerate exactly the outcome nobody wants. The practical detail, 2 to 3 cooked egg whites, lightly seasoned and sliced onto a small rice cake or simply eaten plain, deliver a meaningful protein boost for very little kidney workload. The mistake most seniors make cutting protein across the board out of general caution, which frequently accelerates the muscle loss that's already a serious concern at this stage of life. Strength training deserves a brief mention alongside this snack because protein alone doesn't preserve muscle. It needs a reason to be used. Even light resistance activity, twice a week paired with adequate high-quality protein, does far more for long-term independence than either strategy attempted alone. Egg whites simply make the nutritional half of that equation easier to hit consistently. Bonus tip: hard boiling a batch of eggs at the start of the week, separating the whites, and storing them in the refrigerator turns this from an occasional idea into an easy daily habit. 3. Garlic and onion, used as a flavor swap. Dorothy, 71, missed flavorful food more than almost anything else about her diagnosis. Told to cut sodium, her meals and her snacks along with them had become bland enough that she started skipping snacks entirely rather than eat something she didn't enjoy. This is one of the most overlooked wins available to older adults managing kidney health. Garlic and onion deliver deep, savory flavor with essentially none of the sodium found in seasoning blends, bouillon cubes, or pre-made dips, while contributing their own well-studied anti-inflammatory compounds along the way. Flavor isn't a luxury issue here, it's a compliance issue. A snack a person actually enjoys gets eaten consistently. A bland one gets abandoned within a week, no matter how technically appropriate it is. The practical detail, roasted garlic spread thinly across whole grain crackers or caramelized onions stirred into plain yogurt as a dip, replaces the salt-heavy seasonings most seniors default to without realizing it. The mistake most seniors make, swapping salt for healthier-sounding packaged low-sodium seasoning blends, many of which lean on potassium chloride as a salt substitute, which can create its own concern at this age and stage of kidney function. There's a psychological piece worth naming too. Restrictive diets that ignore taste tend to fail not because people lack discipline, but because deprivation is genuinely hard to sustain for years, not weeks. Garlic and onion aren't just seasoning substitutes, they're part of what makes a kidney-conscious way of eating something a person can realistically stay with for the rest of their life. Bonus tip: roasting a full head of garlic at once and refrigerating the leftover cloves means flavor is always 5 seconds away, not 15 minutes of prep away. 4 apple slices, prepared the right way. Here's where the preparation trick comes in, the detail almost nobody over 65 has ever been told. Frank, 68, had cut fruit almost entirely from his diet, assuming every fruit carried the same sugar and mineral profile. Apples rank among the lower potassium fruits available, and they're rich in a fiber called pectin, along with antioxidant compounds concentrated mostly in the skin. Here's the detail that changes how most people eat this fruit. Leaving the skin on is where most of the antioxidant benefit actually lives, and lightly cooking or baking the apple rather than eating it raw makes those same compounds easier for an older digestive system to break down and absorb, without meaningfully changing the fruit's mineral content. Digestion is worth a moment of its own attention here. Stomach acid production naturally declines with age, and raw produce that was easy to digest at 40 can sit heavier at 70. Lightly cooked fruit solves that problem quietly, without sacrificing the nutrition that made the fruit worth eating in the first place. The practical detail: Thin apple slices, skin left on, lightly baked with cinnamon for about 10 minutes, create a satisfying, easy-to-digest snack that keeps the nutritional benefit fully intact. The mistake most seniors make: peeling the apple out of habit, a small choice that removes most of the fiber and antioxidant content the fruit was offering in the first place. Fiber earns one more mention here, separate from the antioxidant story. Regular fiber intake supports steady digestion and stable blood sugar, both of which indirectly ease strain on the cardiovascular and kidney systems together. A single food rarely does just one job, and baked apple slices are a good example of a snack quietly working on several fronts at once. Bonus tip: baking a full tray of apple slices on a Sunday and refrigerating them provides a ready-made snack for the entire week, with almost no daily effort required. 5 macadamia nuts. Here it is, the snack most seniors have written off entirely for a reason that made sense once but no longer holds up under closer inspection. Nuts as a category tend to get a blanket "limit these" warning, and that warning is fair for most common options. Almonds, cashews, peanuts, and Brazil nuts are all genuinely high in both potassium and phosphorus. Macadamia nuts are the quiet exception to that rule. Ounce for ounce, they carry roughly half the potassium and a fraction of the phosphorus found in most other nuts, while being rich in the same heart-healthy monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. That connection between heart health and kidney health matters more than most people expect, since the two systems influence each other constantly. Supporting one very often supports the other. Cardiovascular risk deserves particular attention in this age group. Heart and blood vessel health directly shape how much pressure and strain the kidneys experience with every heartbeat, which means a heart-healthy fat source is quietly doing kidney work at the same time. The practical detail: a small handful, roughly 10 to 12 macadamia nuts, of the plain unsalted variety makes a satisfying, high satiety snack, without the mineral burden most people assume every nut carries. The mistake most seniors make: avoiding the entire nut category based on a blanket rule, rather than checking whether the specific nut in question actually fits their individual targets. Satiety matters more at this stage of life than people usually credit. A snack that actually satisfies hunger prevents the grazing on processed food pattern that often creeps in during long afternoons at home. Macadamia nuts, eaten in a measured portion, do that job unusually well for their small size. Bonus tip: portioning macadamia nuts into small containers ahead of time prevents the easy mistake of eating well past a single serving in one sitting. Quick question while we're in the middle of this list: has anyone on your care team ever told you which specific foods to reach for? Or has the guidance mostly stopped at "watch your diet"? Drop a comment below and let me know. It's one of the most common gaps families describe to me, and your answer helps other viewers realize they're not the only ones navigating it. Before the closing checklist, one habit deserves a mention because it multiplies the benefit of every snack on this list: consistent hydration throughout the day, not just at mealtimes. Kidneys depend on adequate fluid to filter waste efficiently, and thirst signals naturally weaken with age, meaning many seniors are mildly dehydrated without any sense that something's off. Pairing each of today's 5 snacks with a glass of water rather than saving fluids for meals alone gives the kidneys a genuine assist that costs nothing and takes no extra planning. A useful habit for tracking this: keep a marked water bottle nearby and aim to finish it by a specific time each afternoon. Small, visible goals like that tend to outperform vague intentions to drink more water. 3. Quick questions I hear constantly. Before the closing checklist, 3 questions come up often enough that they deserve a direct answer here. Can I eat more than one of these snacks in the same day? In most cases, yes. These 5 foods were chosen specifically because they layer well together rather than compete for the same mineral budget. Still, individual targets vary, so confirming portions with your dietitian remains the safest approach if your CKD stage is more advanced. Will these snacks actually lower my creatinine number? Food supports kidney function. It doesn't reverse existing structural damage. The honest goal here is slowing unnecessary decline and reducing avoidable strain, not promising a dramatic drop in a lab value. Anyone promising the second one isn't being straight with you. What if I don't like one of these foods? Substitution is reasonable within the same category. Another low-potassium vegetable in place of peppers, for instance. But run any swap past your dietitian first, since minor differences in mineral content between similar-looking foods can matter more than they appear to. Before you go, here's something worth bringing to your next appointment. The Healthy Aging Kidney Checklist, 5 questions to ask your doctor or dietitian directly. 1. Based on my current labs, which of today's 5 snacks actually fit where I am right now? 2. Is my protein intake sufficient to protect my muscle mass at my age, and are my sources the right quality? 3. Am I preparing high-potassium foods, like potatoes, using methods that genuinely reduce their mineral content? 4. How often should my creatinine and kidney labs be rechecked as I make these changes? 5. Are any of my current medications or supplements affecting my kidney function in ways we haven't yet discussed? Here's your challenge for the next 30 days. Choose one snack from today's list, whichever fits your routine most naturally, and add it consistently. Write down today's creatinine number from your most recent labs. Keep a simple daily note of how you feel and bring both to your next appointment. A number on a page doesn't tell the whole story of your health, but it does tell part of it, and you have more influence over which direction that part moves than most people realize. Think back to Walter for a moment, the patient from the very beginning of this video. 6 months after that first conversation, his labs hadn't dramatically transformed, and nobody promised him they would. What had changed was something quieter. He no longer approached meals with dread because he finally understood which foods were working alongside him instead of against him. That shift, more than any single number, is what this whole conversation is really about. If this video gave you something useful, subscribe for more clear, practical guidance on healthy aging. No extremes, no fear tactics, just what the evidence actually supports, explained the way it should have been explained the first time. And if you know another older adult who's been handed a list of restrictions with no explanation behind it, consider sending this video their way. It might save them the same 3 months of unnecessary worry that Walter went through. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.